Alright, so I just saw this movie called Love in the Villa. Starts off with this lady by the name of Julie. She's like a school teacher. And she's been saving up her money. She's always wanting to go to this trip to Verona, like somewhere in Italy. And she wants to go with her boyfriend, Brandon. She had this itinerary laid out. Brandon was getting cold feet. He felt like it was too much. And then he ends up breaking up with her over dinner. Bottom line, she's still going to go to Verona. And she's obsessed with the story of Romeo and Juliet. You know, she believes love is destiny and all this other stuff. So basically, she's going to take the trip by herself. And it feels like a string of bad luck at first. Because the flights get delayed, little kids kicking the back of her seat. Her bags were transported on another airline, so she got to wait a couple days for her stuff. She can't get an Uber. She ends up getting this crazy taxi driver who literally drives on like both sides of the road. You're like, what the heck is he doing? So she finally gets to the villa. It doesn't exactly look like she expected it to look. But the reason she's outside of it is supposedly this is the same spot that Romeo proposed to Juliet or whatever. Like back in the 1920s or 30s or something like that. So she gets there, there's nothing but cats all around. Then when she gets in the villa, she finds out somebody else is in there. This dude by the name of Charlie. Apparently the owner of the villa, Silvio, had both of them staying there at the same time. So Julie's thinking to herself, what's the deal with that? So Charlie's been coming out here every year for the past 6 years staying at this same villa. Apparently he knows Silvio very well. But at first he said he didn't because he's never met the man, but he just knows who he is. Then the next day Silvio comes over with like groceries and stuff like that. And she's like, I thought you didn't know this man. Charlie's like, yeah, I lied. Basically I was trying to get you out the villa. So Silvio says something about either his wife or his girlfriend messed up the translations or calls or something. And basically she's the one that signed both of them to the same villa. So basically, background story, we found out that Charlie's actually a wine taster. But apparently it's not as glamorous as people think. Very serious business in that line of work. Even though it looks glamorous because you get to just taste wines all day. I won't get to the logistics of that, but anyway. She's basically about to set off on her little itinerary. She's trying to take pictures, but she's bumping into people. She accidentally steps out in the middle of the road. Her itinerary gets ran over by some bikers. Just thinking to herself like, man, fuck this shit. Just be spontaneous. She comes back in trying to cut the AC on. It's like, the AC's broke. Try to turn the fan on. The fan's broke too. So she opens up the door and all these cats keep coming in. And then Charlie jumps up out of his seat. So we're like, what the heck is going on with Charlie? Turns out he's allergic to cats. So in her mind, she's trying to get rid of Charlie. She wants to have the villa to herself, as likewise with Charlie. So then this battle begins between the two of them. So when Charlie sleeps, she goes out and she gets a bunch of like green olives. And she starts planting them all around Charlie. Then she lets the window open so all the cats that come in and they start snagging on the olives and stuff like that. So apparently olives are like catnip to like cats. So that's where the whole green olives thing came from. So while Charlie's thinking of a way to get her back, all of a sudden this guy comes in carrying her bags from the airport. You know, her luggage and stuff. So Charlie tells the guy she went back home and he said, donate the clothes to like an orphanage or something like that. So a couple days go by and she's still waiting on her bags. And she's like, what the heck? Like, where are my stuff? Of course, after the guy gets the explanation, she knows Charlie has something to do with it. So she's like, all right, bet. So she puts some glue inside of a keyhole, gets herself a different key, so it could basically lock Charlie out the villa. He tries to jump over to the porch, Mrs. is just hanging over there. Julie's watching from afar, then she calls the cops and say it was a break-in in the villa. So she sent this dude to jail, like really? I mean, he was only there for a couple hours. Bottom line is just like, dude, what the fuck? But him being in jail kind of messed up one of his job offers, so now she feels bad all of a sudden. So he wants to call a temporary truce. So he fixes her dinner, this like little specialty that's there. They drink their wine, and they drink a lot of wine in this movie. She's trying the food, it's good, but then he tells her like, yeah, it's actually like horse in the food. That's what the meat's supposed to be. Apparently she's supposed to be some type of vegetarian. Then she starts throwing food at him and having a food fight. I'm like, but she ends up throwing bread and ends up breaking the window and then the police are called again. Chief is like, hey, cut this nonsense out with this shit. Okay, this is when they really call it truce. So it turns out he tells her the meat is not actually horse, it's just mushroom. It just feels like meat. Because of the way it's cooked where it's balled into a ball, you just assume that it's some type of meat or whatever like that. But it's really just mushroom. So they start really talking to each other after this. I mean, they're basically just getting along for right now. Obviously, nobody wants to get thrown in jail. She wants to take him to see some of the sights, you know what I'm saying? Because apparently when he goes here, he's been here for like 6 years and he's never been outside of Verona. So apparently after they see a couple of sites, they go back to the villa later on. He gets a call from one of his contractors. His friend's wife is having a baby or whatever like that. So because his friend has to leave early, eventually he's going to be staying in his villa. But that won't be for about another couple days. So they go to a bunch of different spots. You get that me and you lovely conversation on some relationships and destiny and all of those stuff. Then they go to one of his investors. Now it turns out this possible investor is an excellent winemaker, but terrible at business. So the investor is giving Julie a tour of the place or whatever like that. And he's got all different types of wines in his cellar going back to like 800 years worth of tradition. And she kind of by accident get an investor inspiration not to sell, which kind of upset Charlie at first, but then she broke it down and was like, really? Would you be willing to swindle somebody just for profit? And then Charlie was like, yeah, you're kind of right. Because he ain't in it for the money like that. He in it for the experience. Then some music comes on, they start dancing, they almost kiss. And then he's like, he can't. So you think to yourself, why not? So as they're going back to the villa, all of a sudden, this chick named Cassie's in there. We're like, how the fuck did you get in here? Apparently, she climbed down from the rooftop. I'm like, what? Turns out Cassie's actually Charlie's fiance. I'm like, wow. Or they're engaged to be married, you know what I'm saying? So Julie just assesses the situation and then she just like walks out. She's like, all right. So at this point, I was thinking to myself, well, why is she walking out? Because, you know, in the flashback, she's going to go right back to the villa anyway. He's going to go to the other villa. It's like him and Cassie, apparently. But anyway, you know, because it got to a point they was really feeling each other. But, you know, now we see why he couldn't kiss her. He was trying to explain things, but she wasn't trying to hear that shit. And Cassie's the type that's very much into money and the high living lifestyle and all that other stuff. So while Charlie and Cassie are staying at the expensive villa that their friend put up because his wife's having a baby and whatnot, Julian's getting a knock at the door. She's thinking this Charlie pops up, and all of a sudden this Brandon sitting at the door. I'm like, how the fuck did you get here? So he gives her a speech about, yeah, I had some space to think about it. You know what I'm saying? I missed you in my life. I can't live without you. Blah blah blah. So we're like, okay, truly he must care about you if he came all the way up here to see what's up with you, right? So Brandon wants to take Julie to this expensive spot to eat or whatever like that, but apparently they're out of tables. Then from across the table, Cassie sees Julie. He's like, oh, you got to come over here. Come on, guys. Yeah, Cassie and Charlie over there eating. So they're getting together, obviously, had the awkward moments and whatnot. So all of a sudden, while these people are talking or whatever like that, these girls come up and was like, oh my God, Julie, you're such an inspiration. You know what I'm saying? They're like, I'm glad you left that sleazeball Brandon, this, that, and the third. So they're all confused. Now, apparently, one of the tricks that Charlie pulled when they was pranking or whatever like that, Julie had this diary, right? And she wrote all the stuff about Brandon after they broke up. One of the pranks that Charlie did back in the beginning part of the movie was like put up all the pictures and diary stuff and posted it all on this mural. It's like on the wall or whatever like that. And all these girls came out, they were devastated or whatever like that, but they have sympathy for Julie. So that's where that scene comes up from. So after Julie and Brandon leave the restaurant, they end up going back to the villa. Charlie's thinking about his life choices and he ends up breaking up with Cassie. But he's going back to the villa surrounded by cats, and he gets over his fear of cats and just runs past all of them. But by the time he gets to the other balcony, he sees Brandon proposing to Julie. And that's the moment where he dips off. But it turns out Julie did not accept the proposal. So basically the next day, Brandon has a talk with Charlie has a talk with Silvio. He's getting talks about destiny. He's like, hey, if you want to get her, you got to go get her. You know what I'm saying? Julie officially broke up with Brandon. Brandon's like heart struck. All of a sudden, he sees Cassie. And then they end up getting together. Julie's about ready to leave, get on a trip, and go back home. But then she goes back for one more thing. She goes back and gets her hoodie that she got from the gift shop at the beginning of the movie. Then all of a sudden, she hears Charlie out the window giving like Romeo and Juliet quotes. She falls into his arms after they both explain their situations. They kiss, and that's the end of the movie. Love in the Villa on Netflix. There you go.